The storm raged that night with a ferocity that seemed otherworldly. Sheets of rain swept through the small coastal town, flooding streets and washing away anything not firmly rooted. The wind howled as if mourning lost souls, uprooting trees and scattering debris through the desolate avenues. The ocean, untamed and furious, hurled waves high against the promenade, threatening to engulf everything in its path. Amid the chaos, a lone figure trudged along the waterlogged road. Her clothes clung to her shivering frame, soaked and heavy from the relentless downpour. Her bare feet splashed through the icy puddles, the cold cutting into her skin like shards of glass. She was destitute, her worldly possessions, meager as they were, swept away in the storm. Each step drained her, leaving her barely able to keep moving. Through squinted eyes, blurred by exhaustion and rain, she noticed a faint light in the distance. It flickered faintly, as if struggling against the storm's wrath. The source became clearer as she approached, a once grand building that now stood weathered and forlorn. The arches of its windows, cracked and grimy, hinted at its past splendor. She recognized it immediately. This was the Seabreeze Hotel, a place of legend in her town. In its prime, it had hosted illustrious parties, its gardens the envy of the region, and its balconies offering sunsets that inspired poetry. Now, the hotel stood as a shell of its former glory, an echo of past grandeur. For the woman, it was a painful reflection of her own life, forgotten, broken, and left standing through sheer resilience. Despite its state, the building offered a beacon of hope. She pressed forward, driven by a desperation to escape the storm's icy grip. As she reached the entrance, she hesitated. The windows, though dimly lit, suggested that someone might still inhabit the ruins. With trembling hands, she knocked, her feeble rap swallowed by the storm. She tried again, louder this time. Moments later, the creak of floorboards and approaching footsteps sent her heart racing. The door swung open, revealing a man with a weary face etched by years of struggle. His dark hair flecked with gray, framed eyes that carried a weariness matching the state of the building behind him. He frowned at her, his voice gruff. "Who are you, and what do you want?" "Please," she whispered, her voice fragile and hoarse. "Just for one night, I have nowhere else to go." He hesitated, his fingers tightening on the door. This wasn't a shelter. He had his own problems. The hotel, once a jewel of the coast, was now a crumbling liability. The few remaining staff had long since abandoned him, and creditors circled like vultures. Allowing a stranger in seemed like one more burden. But something in her eyes, a hopelessness he recognized all too well, stirred something within him. "This isn't a charity," he muttered, but his words lacked conviction. "I don't need charity," she replied, clutching her arms to stave off the cold. "Just a roof for tonight. I'll be gone by morning." He sighed heavily, stepping aside. "Fine, come in." The woman entered, her drenched form leaving a trail of water on the floor. For a moment, she simply stood there, allowing the relative warmth of the lobby to envelop her. The space was a shadow of its former self. Once resplendent chandeliers now hung dull and cobwebbed. Furniture that had once hosted dignitaries and celebrities was faded and torn. Still, it was a refuge. And the man returned with a towel, thrusting it toward her. "Dry off. I'll prepare a room." "Thank you so much," she said, clutching the towel like a lifeline. He disappeared upstairs, choosing the least dilapidated room for her, a small space on the second floor with an old but clean bed. When he returned, he found her perched on a chair in the corner of the lobby, her shoulders hunched and her gaze distant. "This way," he said gruffly, leading her to the room. She followed, her footsteps slow and unsteady. He opened the door and gestured inside. Not much," he admitted, "but it's warm." "It's perfect," she murmured, her voice filled with gratitude. As he left her to settle in, the man felt an unexpected lightness. Despite the challenges bearing down on him, letting her in felt right. That night, for the first time in a long while, he slept without the weight of complete despair. Morning broke, the storm giving way to a crisp, clear dawn. The man, whose name was James Carlyle, descended the creaking stairs, expecting to find the woman gone. To his surprise, she was in the lobby, waiting. Good morning, she greeted him softly. You're still here, he remarked. I didn't want to leave without thanking you. I owe you for your kindness. James waved her off. No need, you can go now. But she shook her head. Let me repay you somehow. I can work, clean, cook, anything. James frowned. I don't need help. Maybe not, but this place does. Her words struck a chord. She wasn't wrong. The Seabreeze Hotel was crumbling, and his solitary efforts hadn't been enough to halt its decline. Before he could respond, she introduced herself. My name is Evelyn Harper, she said. I used to work in hospitality before everything fell apart. I know how to fix places like this. James hesitated. There was something earnest in her demeanor, a quiet determination that made him pause. Fine, he relented. You can stay a few days, but don't expect much. Over the following days, Evelyn proved to be a whirlwind of energy. She scrubbed the lobby floors until they gleamed, repaired broken furniture, and even repurposed faded curtains into makeshift decor. She worked tirelessly, pouring herself into the hotel's revival. For James, watching her was both inspiring and humbling. Her efforts revealed the potential he had long given up on. More than that, she brought warmth to the cold, empty spaces of the Seabreeze. One afternoon, as they worked side by side repairing a broken banister, Evelyn shared her story. She spoke of how she had once managed a thriving boutique hotel, only to lose everything after her business partner's betrayal. The pain in her voice was raw, but there was also a resilience that James couldn't ignore. I guess we're both trying to rebuild something, she said with a small, bittersweet smile. Yeah, James agreed, his voice quiet. But maybe we don't have to do it alone. Their partnership blossomed over the weeks. As Evelyn continued to breathe new life into the Seabreeze, James found himself daring to hope again. The hotel, which had once seemed destined for ruin, began to feel like it could be saved. But the real test was yet to come. As whispers of the hotel's revival began to spread, they attracted the attention of someone who wasn't happy about it. A wealthy competitor determined to crush any threat to his monopoly. Little did James and Evelyn know, their fight to save the Seabreeze had only just begun. James and Evelyn continued their steady work on the Seabreeze Hotel, inching it closer to its former glory. Days turned into weeks, and the dilapidated building began to transform into a place that felt alive once more. Evelyn's touch was everywhere. Fresh flowers arranged in vases on the lobby tables, curtains pulled back to let in the sunlight, and polished brass fixtures that gleamed with a hint of pride. James, though initially reluctant, found himself energized by her drive. However, their progress hadn't gone unnoticed. Across town, Victor Leland, the owner of the luxurious Coral Haven Resort, watched with growing irritation. The Seabreeze Hotel, once a forgotten relic, was slowly becoming a beacon of interest for both locals and travelers. Victor wasn't one to tolerate competition, especially from a hotel that he had assumed would crumble into obscurity. He sat in his expansive office, his desk littered with reports on the Seabreeze's resurgence. It's a fluke, he muttered, dismissing his assistant's concerns. But the gnawing thought that James Carlisle's venture could pose a real threat wouldn't leave his mind. He decided to act. One morning, as Evelyn was tidying up the reception area, a young man in a suit walked in. His polished appearance and clipboard screamed corporate, a stark contrast to the rustic charm of the Seabreeze. Good morning, he said, flashing a rehearsed smile. I'm Nathan Price, a representative from Coastal Preservation and Development. I'm here to discuss some concerns regarding your property. Evelyn exchanged a glance with James, who had appeared from the hallway with a toolbox in hand. Concerns? James asked, setting the tools down. What kind of concerns? Nathan gestured toward the clipboard. We've received reports that this property may not meet current safety and environmental regulations, specifically structural integrity and coastal compliance issues. James's jaw tightened. This hotel has been here for decades. If there were compliance issues, they'd have been addressed years ago. Be that as it may, Nathan said smoothly, standards have evolved and we'll need to conduct a formal inspection. If the Seabreeze fails to meet these regulations, it could face significant penalties. Or closure. Evelyn's heart sank. She knew enough about the bureaucracy of such inspections to understand the uphill battle they'd face. "Who filed the report?" James demanded, his voice sharp. Nathan's smile didn't falter. "I'm afraid that information is confidential." As Nathan left, Evelyn turned to James. "This isn't a coincidence. Someone doesn't want us to succeed." James nodded grimly. "And I think I know exactly who that is." Determined to fight back, Evelyn and James began preparing for the inspection. Evelyn dug through old records, ensuring that every permit and document for the property was in order. James worked tirelessly to address any physical issues that could be flagged. Their small staff and a handful of supportive locals pitched in, driven by a shared desire to see the Seabreeze thrive. Meanwhile, Evelyn took to social media to rally support. She posted updates about the hotel's restoration, inviting guests to share their experiences and spread the word about the Seabreeze. The community responded with enthusiasm, flooding the hotel's page with glowing reviews and heartfelt stories. But the looming inspection wasn't their only challenge. Late one night, as Evelyn reviewed paperwork in the office, she heard a noise outside. It was faint but distinct, the crunch of footsteps on gravel. Her heart raced as she peeked out the window, her eyes scanning the darkened grounds. A shadowy figure darted past the garden, heading toward the storage shed. Without thinking, she grabbed a flashlight and slipped outside. The cool night air chilled her as she moved cautiously toward the shed, the beam of light trembling slightly in her hand. "Yeah, hello," she called, her voice firm despite her nerves. The figure froze, then turned to face her. It was a man, his face partially obscured by a hood. For a tense moment, they stared at each other before he bolted, disappearing into the night. Evelyn's legs trembled as she rushed back inside. James, who had been asleep upstairs, came running down at the sound of the door slamming. "What happened?" he asked, concern etched across his face. "There was someone out there," Evelyn said, her voice shaking. "He was trying to break into the shed." James's expression darkened. "This isn't random. Someone's trying to scare us." The following days were a whirlwind of activity. James installed additional security measures around the property, while Evelyn remained hypervigilant. Despite the tension, they refused to let fear deter them. The inspection date loomed closer, and they couldn't afford any distractions. The night before the inspection, Evelyn sat on the balcony, staring out at the moonlit waves. James joined her, carrying 2 mugs of steaming tea. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, handing her a mug. She shook her head. "It's hard not to think about everything that's at stake." And James took a sip of his tea before setting the mug down. "We've come too far to let anyone take this from us. No matter what happens tomorrow, we'll face it together." His words brought a small smile to her lips. "I don't know what I would have done without you, James." He looked at her, his eyes soft. "You saved this place, Evelyn, and you've done more for me than I could ever put into words." For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of unspoken emotions hanging between them. The day of the inspection arrived, bringing with it a flurry of activity. Nathan Price returned, this time accompanied by a team of inspectors. They combed through every inch of the property, scrutinizing everything from the foundation to the plumbing. James and Evelyn watched anxiously as the team took notes and exchanged whispers. Hours passed before the lead inspector approached them with a clipboard in hand. "Well," he began, "I'll be honest, this property has seen better days, but it's clear that a lot of effort has been put into its restoration. The structural integrity is sound, and all the necessary permits are in place." Evelyn let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "However," the inspector continued, "there are a few minor issues that will need to be addressed. Nothing that warrants closure, but you'll need to resolve them within the next 6 months." Relief washed over them like a wave. James extended a hand to the inspector. "Thank you. We'll take care of it." As the inspection team departed, Evelyn turned to James, her smile radiant. "We did it." No, he corrected, pulling her a hug. "You did it." News of the Seabreeze's successful inspection spread quickly, silencing the whispers and doubts that Victor had tried to sow. The hotel's reputation grew stronger, and bookings surged as word of its charm and resilience reached new audiences. One evening, as the lobby buzzed with guests, James pulled Evelyn aside. He led her to the garden, where twinkling lights illuminated a cozy table set for two. A bottle of wine and a bouquet of wildflowers completed the scene. "What's all this?" she asked, her cheeks flushing. James smiled. "Just a way to say thank you for everything." They sat under the stars, sharing stories and laughter. For the first time in what felt like ages, they allowed themselves to simply enjoy the moment. As the evening wore on, James reached across the table, taking Evelyn's hand in his. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want you in it, not just as my partner in this hotel, but in life." Evelyn's eyes glistened with tears, her voice soft. "I want that too, James." Under the starlit sky, they sealed their promise with a kiss, a moment of pure, unspoken love. The Sea Breeze Hotel, once a forgotten relic, now stood as a symbol of resilience and hope. It wasn't just a place for travelers, it was a sanctuary where dreams were rebuilt and lives were transformed. And for James and Evelyn, it was the beginning of a future filled with endless possibilities. The weeks following the Seabreeze Hotel's successful inspection were a whirlwind of transformation. The small team worked tirelessly to address the inspector's feedback, ensuring every corner of the property met and exceeded expectations. With each passing day, the hotel grew stronger, not just in structure but in spirit. Evelyn and James felt the momentum, and the sense of community around the Seabreeze blossomed into something extraordinary. Evelyn and James felt the power of community beyond the Seabreeze could carry them, no matter how unwilling they might be to tell a photo to the country's clearest S out, as they knew it. One morning, as Evelyn sifted through guest bookings and James oversaw repairs on the terrace, a sleek black car pulled into the gravel driveway. The vehicle's polished exterior gleamed in the sun, and its arrival turned heads. Out stepped a man in a tailored suit, his posture radiating confidence. It was none other than Victor Leland, the owner of Coral Haven Resort. Evelyn froze as she watched him stride toward the reception desk. James emerged from the terrace, his expression darkening as he recognized the man responsible for their recent troubles. "Mr. Carlyle, Ms. Bennett," Victor greeted smoothly, removing his sunglasses and flashing a disarming smile. "May I have a moment of your time?" James crossed his arms. "What could you possibly want, Victor? Haven't you caused enough damage already?" Victor raised his hands in mock surrender. "I'll admit my tactics were aggressive, but I'm here to propose a truce." Evelyn narrowed her eyes. "A truce? After everything you've done to undermine us?" Victor chuckled softly, his tone measured. "Business is business, Ms. Bennett. But even I can't ignore the rising tide of the Seabreeze's success. I underestimated you both, and I'd rather work with you than against you." James and Evelyn exchanged skeptical glances. "What's your angle?" James asked. Victor leaned against the counter, his expression unreadable. "I propose a partnership. The Seabreeze has undeniable charm, but Coral Haven has resources, marketing, connections, and the means to attract more high-end clientele. Together, we could create something unparalleled." Evelyn hesitated, considering his words. "And what would you get out of this?" Victor's smile widened. "A share of the spotlight and a stake in the future. Think of it as mutual benefit." James shook his head. "We've built this place on our terms. I'm not interested in handing over control." Victor straightened, his tone turning serious. "I'm not asking for control. I'm asking for collaboration. But if you're determined to go it alone, I wish you luck. Just know that opportunities like this don't come often." With that, he slipped his sunglasses back on and walked out, leaving James and Evelyn to grapple with the implications of his visit. Victor's proposal lingered in their minds over the following days, sparking heated debates between James and Evelyn. James was adamant about preserving the independence of the Seabreeze, while Evelyn saw potential in leveraging Coral Haven's resources without compromising their values. "We could set boundaries," Evelyn argued during one of their late-night strategy sessions. Make it clear that this partnership doesn't give him control over our decisions. And what's to stop him from using it to his advantage? James countered. Victor's not the kind of man who plays fair. He'll twist the deal to benefit himself. Evelyn sighed, running a hand through her hair. I just want to explore every possibility. The sea breeze deserves to grow, and maybe, just maybe, Victor's resources could help us achieve that. Their disagreement hung in the air, unresolved but not divisive. They both wanted what was best for the sea breeze, even if their visions didn't always align. While James and Evelyn weighed their options, an unexpected development shifted their focus. A travel influencer who had stayed at the hotel weeks earlier had published a glowing video review of the sea breeze. The video showcased the hotel's unique charm, from its vintage architecture to the heartfelt hospitality provided by the team. The video went viral, amassing thousands of views in a matter of days. Comments flooded in from people across the country, expressing their desire to visit the sea breeze. Evelyn and James were inundated with booking requests, and the phone at the front desk rang almost constantly. It's unbelievable, Evelyn said one evening as she scrolled through the comments. People are calling us a hidden gem. James grinned. You're the one who made that happen. Your attention to detail, your vision. It's what sets us apart. As the influx of guests surged, the Seabreeze team expanded to meet demand. They hired additional staff, including local chefs, to elevate the dining experience, and event coordinators to handle the growing number of weddings and retreats being booked. Among the new guests was a woman named Clara, an older traveler with a soft-spoken demeanor and a suitcase plastered with stickers from far-flung destinations. Clara spent her days quietly observing the hotel's bustle, her eyes lighting up whenever she spoke to James or Evelyn. One evening, as James and Evelyn finished their rounds, Clara approached them in the lounge. I wanted to thank you both, she began, her voice tinged with emotion. This place is more than just a hotel. It feels like a home. Evelyn smiled warmly. That's exactly what we want it to be, a refuge for people to feel welcome and connected. Clara hesitated before continuing. The sea breeze reminds me of a place I used to visit with my late husband. He passed away 5 years ago, and since then I've been searching for something that feels like those moments we shared. I think I finally found it. James and Evelyn were deeply moved by her words. Clara's story reaffirmed the heart of their mission, creating a space where people could find solace, joy, and connection. With the hotel thriving, Evelyn proposed an idea to further cement the Seabreeze's place in the community. A seaside festival celebrating local art, music, and culture. The festival would not only draw more visitors, but also strengthen the bond between the hotel and the town. Preparations began in earnest, with Evelyn spearheading the event and James managing logistics. Local artists and musicians eagerly signed up, and vendors lined the streets outside the hotel, offering everything from handmade crafts to gourmet treats. The festival drew a crowd beyond their wildest expectations. The Seabreeze was at the center of it all, its grounds transformed into a lively hub of activity. Families strolled through the gardens, children laughed as they played near the fountain, and couples danced to live music under strings of twinkling lights. Amid the celebration, Evelyn and James shared a quiet moment on the terrace, watching the festivities unfold. We did this, Evelyn said, her voice filled with awe. The Seabreeze isn't just a hotel anymore. It's a cornerstone of this town. James nodded, his gaze steady. And it's because of you, Evelyn. You've given this place, and me, a second chance. As the festival wound down and the last guests retired to their rooms, Evelyn and James found themselves alone in the moonlit garden. The air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the faint hum of the ocean. James turned to Evelyn, his expression serious yet tender. I've spent so much of my life focused on the past, on what I lost, but being here with you has taught me to look forward. I want to build a future not just for the Seabreeze, but for Evelyn's heart swelled with emotion. I want that too, James, more than anything. Under the canopy of stars, they sealed their promise with a kiss, knowing that together they could weather any storm. As the Seabreeze Hotel continued to flourish, it stood as a testament to the power of resilience, love, and community. James and Evelyn's journey had only just begun, and the future held endless possibilities for the place they now called home. The weeks after the Seaside Festival brought a profound sense of accomplishment to Evelyn and James. But they also revealed new challenges. The surge in popularity meant their once cozy Seabreeze Hotel was evolving into a more prominent establishment. Managing this transformation required not only effort, but also a delicate balance between growth and preserving the heart of what made the hotel special. So, the hotel took off. One evening, as James and Evelyn sat in the office reviewing plans, James leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms. "We've come a long way," he said with a faint smile, glancing at the detailed blueprints for a potential spa and wellness center. "But do you think we're going too far?" Evelyn set down her cup of tea, her expression thoughtful. "I don't think so. We're not just expanding for the sake of it. Every step we've taken has been about enhancing the experience for our guests and strengthening our connection to the community. As long as we stay true to that, I think we'll be fine." James nodded, his shoulders relaxing. "I trust you. You've always had a way of seeing the big picture." The next morning, Evelyn shared an idea that had been quietly taking shape in her mind. "What if we focused on making the Seabreeze a destination for meaningful retreats?" she suggested as they walked along the beach. "We could host wellness workshops, artist residencies, even small conferences for people who want to escape the noise of the city." James kicked a piece of driftwood, thinking, "It could work. The Seabreeze already has that peaceful atmosphere, but we'd need to bring in the right people to lead those events." Evelyn's face lit up. "Exactly. I've already reached out to a few connections, artists, yoga instructors, even a renowned chef who could lead culinary retreats." James chuckled. "You've been busy." Evelyn grinned. "Always." As plans for the retreats took shape, Evelyn received a letter that stopped her in her tracks. It was postmarked from her hometown, and the handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable. It was from her estranged sister, Rachel. Evelyn hesitated before opening it, the past rushing back like a tide she couldn't escape. Years ago, their relationship had fractured over a bitter dispute about their parents' estate, and they hadn't spoken since. But now, the letter in her hands felt like an olive branch. She unfolded the paper and began to read. "Dear Evelyn, I know it's been years since we last spoke, and I have no right to ask anything of you, but I recently came across an article about the Seabreeze Hotel and saw your name attached to it. I don't know if you'll even read this, but I wanted to say how proud I am of what you've accomplished. I'd love to reconnect if you're open to it. I understand if you're not ready, but please know that I'm thinking of you and wishing you all the best. With love, Rachel." Evelyn stared at the letter, her emotions a tumultuous mix of longing, regret, and hesitation. She folded it carefully and slipped it into her desk drawer, unsure of what to do. Over the next few days, Evelyn found herself distracted, her thoughts repeatedly returning to Rachel's letter. Finally, during a quiet evening in the garden, she decided to confide in James. "I got a letter from my sister," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. James set down the watering can he'd been holding and looked at her with quiet concern. "Rachel?" Evelyn nodded. "She wants to reconnect, but after everything that happened, I don't know if I'm ready." James sat beside her, his tone gentle. "Sometimes, the hardest steps are the ones that matter most. If you're not ready, that's okay. But maybe this is an opportunity to heal." Evelyn sighed, staring at the horizon. "What if it just opens old wounds?" James placed a reassuring hand on hers. "Then at least you'll know you tried, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find something better on the other side." A week later, Evelyn finally mustered the courage to write back to Rachel, inviting her to visit the Seabreeze. When Rachel arrived, she looked nervous but hopeful, her eyes scanning the hotel with curiosity. "It's beautiful," Rachel said as Evelyn greeted her in the lobby. You've really created something special here. Thank you, Evelyn replied, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. Let me show you around. As they walked through the hotel and along the beach, their conversation remained polite but cautious, like two strangers testing the waters. It wasn't until they sat together for dinner that the barriers between them began to crack. I'm sorry, Rachel said abruptly, her eyes brimming with tears. For everything. For how I acted back then. I was angry, but that doesn't excuse the way I treated you. Evelyn took a deep breath, her own tears threatening to spill. I made mistakes too. I should have tried harder to understand your side. The two sisters sat in silence for a moment before Rachel reached across the table and took Evelyn's hand. Can we start over? Evelyn smiled through her tears. I'd like that. As Evelyn and Rachel worked to rebuild their relationship, Rachel became a regular presence at the Seabreeze, helping with events and lending her own creative touch to the hotel's growing retreat programs. The sisters' reconciliation became a source of inspiration for Evelyn, who channeled her renewed sense of connection into every aspect of the hotel. One day, Rachel approached Evelyn with an idea. What if we planted a garden here? A space where guests can reflect, connect, or just enjoy some peace and quiet. Evelyn loved the idea. Together, they worked with local landscapers and volunteers to create a serene garden tucked away in a quiet corner of the property. The centerpiece was a fountain surrounded by vibrant flowers, with benches and winding paths that invited visitors to linger. The garden quickly became a favorite spot for guests, and Evelyn often found herself there during quiet moments, reflecting on how far she and the Seabreeze had come. As the hotel continued to thrive, Evelyn and James decided it was time to give back to the community that had supported them from the beginning. They launched an initiative to mentor local entrepreneurs, offering workshops and resources to help others turn their dreams into reality. One of their mentees, a young baker named Clara, used the opportunity to open her own bakery in town. Her success story mirrored the journey of the Seabreeze, and she became a regular collaborator with the hotel, providing fresh pastries for their breakfast service. The initiative not only strengthened the bond between the Seabreeze and the community, but also solidified the hotel's reputation as a place of opportunity and hope. As the seasons changed, Evelyn and James found themselves standing on the beach one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The hotel behind them was bustling with life, its windows glowing warmly against the twilight sky. We've built something incredible here, Evelyn said softly, her hand brushing against James's. James nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. And there's so much more to come. Evelyn turned to him, her heart full. No matter what happens, we'll face it together. James smiled, pulling her into a gentle embrace. Always. As the waves lapped at the shore and the stars began to appear, Evelyn and James stood together, ready to face whatever the future held. The Seabreeze was more than a hotel. It was a testament to resilience, love, and the power of second chances. And for Evelyn and James, it was home. And in the weeks that followed, Evelyn and James turned their focus to the future of the Seabreeze Hotel. Though the hotel had blossomed into a beloved retreat, they knew its success was built on adaptability and innovation. They spent long evenings brainstorming ways to not only maintain but enrich the unique atmosphere that set the Seabreeze apart. One afternoon, as Evelyn sat on the terrace responding to inquiries from prospective guests, she received an intriguing email. It was from an international travel magazine that had taken notice of the Seabreeze through online reviews and guest testimonials. They wanted to feature the hotel in an upcoming issue about hidden gems in the world of boutique hospitality. Evelyn's heart raced as she read the email aloud to James. This could change everything, she said, barely able to contain her excitement. James nodded thoughtfully. It's a big opportunity, but it's also a lot of pressure. We'll need to make sure everything is perfect when they come to visit. Together, they began planning for the journalist's visit, focusing on showcasing the authentic charm and personal touches that define the Seabreeze. Evelyn organized special events for the week of the visit, including a sunset dinner on the beach and an interactive cooking class featuring local recipes. When the journalist, a warm and curious woman named Natalie, arrived, She was immediately captivated by the sea breeze's blend of elegance and comfort. She marveled at the attention to detail in the decor, the warmth of the staff, and the way Evelyn and James seemed to personally connect with every guest. As Natalie walked through the garden, taking notes and snapping photos, she turned to Evelyn. "This place doesn't just feel like a hotel, it feels like a home. How did you create something so special?" Evelyn smiled, her voice steady despite the emotions bubbling beneath the surface. "It wasn't just me, it was the community, the guests, and everyone who believed in this place. The sea breeze is a reflection of all the love and effort poured into it." The feature article, titled "A Haven by the Sea, The Magic of Seabreeze Hotel," was published a month later. It painted a vivid picture of the hotel's transformation, its role in the community, and the passion of its owners. Almost overnight, the Seabreeze gained international recognition, attracting a new wave of guests, eager to experience the magic for themselves. With the influx of international visitors, the Seabreeze became a vibrant hub of cultural exchange. Guests from all corners of the globe shared their stories over breakfast, participated in community events, and left with memories that lingered long after their departure. One evening, Evelyn noticed a group of guests from different countries gathered around a table in the courtyard, laughing and exchanging stories. It was a moment that encapsulated everything she and James had worked for. The Seabreeze wasn't just a hotel, it was a bridge connecting people from all walks of life. Inspired by this, Evelyn proposed a new initiative, themed cultural weeks where guests could immerse themselves in the traditions, cuisine, and art of different regions. The idea was met with enthusiasm, and soon, the Sea Breeze hosted its first cultural celebration week, featuring local musicians, workshops, and themed dinners. As Evelyn and James stood on the balcony one evening, watching the lights of the hotel twinkle like stars against the darkening sky, James spoke quietly. "I never imagined this is where we'd be, not just with the hotel, but with everything." But Evelyn leaned into him, her voice soft but certain. "It's more than I ever dreamed, but it feels right. This is where we're meant to be." They stood in comfortable silence, the sound of the waves a steady rhythm beneath their thoughts. The Seabreeze had become more than a sanctuary for its guests. It was a symbol of renewal, connection, and hope. And as Evelyn and James gazed out at the endless expanse of the ocean, they knew the journey wasn't over. The horizon was wide, the possibilities endless, and the heart of the Seabreeze beat stronger than ever. Like what you saw, there's another video on screen you'll love. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories.